Hey everybody, welcome to Verified Investing. My name is Gareth Soloway, Chief Market Strategist here. In today's video, we're going to dissect the daily, weekly, monthly chart of Bitcoin. We're even going to look at Bitcoin dominance because it is telling us something that every crypto investor should be aware of. But first, let's start with the daily chart. Taking a look here, we can see that again, what we have in the near term is what would be called a double top. Double tops, again, you can see a prior high pivot. We pulled back and came back down. We then charged back up and we went right back to that high. Now, double tops notoriously pierce the prior high. They do that because a lot of individual investors will put stops right at that previous high. So if price goes above it, those stops again on those shorts, they will be turned into buys, right? So to cover a short, you must buy back Bitcoin. And that's why in general, you'll see pierces of double top. So just because it gets above that level, don't get fooled yet until it confirms the breakout. And obviously we didn't see a confirmation of the breakout here. In fact, we had a nasty red candle reversal pattern here, or candlestick. Now, again, what makes a reversal candlestick? All right, so engulfing reversal would mean Bitcoin would have had to open at the prior high here from the prior green candle. It did not. Obviously, we pulled back here and it opened here. So it's not engulfing reversal. It's just a reversal candle. But to suffice it and simplify it, a reversal candle is a down candle that engulfs and closes below the prior big green candle. And that in general is a slight negative signal on the Bitcoin chart. Essentially, it reinforces the double top as a near-term high. Now, from that point, we've come back in and we're now potentially, and I say potentially because we don't know yet, but potentially putting in a short-term bear flag, right? And again, let's be clear on this. Bear flags, they need to mature. Maturing bear flag would to me be 5 candles or bigger going sideways. If we look at the current chart, there's only 3, right? 1, 2, and 3. So this would be referred to as an immature bear flag. Immature bear flags notoriously are less reliable than mature bear flags. All right. So again, it is starting to form it, but we really want to see, does it continue to go sideways for another few days? If it does, then it's going to increase the odds of a rollover in Bitcoin, in which case your next major support would be around 112,000. All right, on the other side, let's talk about the bull case in the near term. Let's say this immature pattern doesn't mature, and in fact, we start to spike up. If we get above this level here at around 123,300, if we get a daily close and the next day we confirm above that high, then that is a purebred breakout, and you would expect price to head up to 130 plus thousand on Bitcoin. So that's the short term. Now, let's zoom out just a little bit. I want you guys paying attention to this key trend line. There's this low from April of 2025. This was the Liberation Day sell-off that hit asset prices, the stock market, as well as Bitcoin. If we take that low and we drag it up, look at what we have. We have this beautiful upsloping trend line. And in fact, I'm going to change the color so it really pops out here in yellow. So this low to this low, and notice it tags this low exactly to the penny. This now becomes your level that on a basis for a longer term bias. So again, we're not talking long term. Long term, Bitcoin still is a major bullish mover, right? So again, you go back to, 2017, the highs there, every subsequent bull market high, we've made higher highs. So the longer term trend, that's not up for debate, guys. That is up, 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 up. The near and midterm, so near term, we're watching the bear flag. In the midterm, this trend line here becomes of a paramount concern, because if we break below and confirm below, let's say 116,000, even if we go down and test this 112,000, we're still below this uptrend trend line. And again, think about the word trend line. It's a trend. right? So the idea is if we take this line out here, the trend that has lasted since April of this year would be broken. And at that point, I would think, yes, you get a bounce at 112,000, but it likely even goes lower than that after you get a bounce, potentially back to this 98,000 pivot. And you can see again how the 98,000 pivot goes right through here, right? This high here and this low right there. And so that very clearly tells us that would be a good level of support. Needless to say, if we continue down, there are other trend lines to monitor on the charts. I would be very intrigued by this level as a longer term bull market. You know, again, we talked about the bull market being the longer term angle. So 86,000 would be a really good level. And you could see going back to 2023, essentially the bear market for crypto was down in this range, right? You could even extend this out here a little bit, but suffice it to say, this is really when Bitcoin started to rally higher, bull flag, rally higher, retrace into that same trend line, and then the latest pop to the upside. But for me, as someone who would look for a long-term entry on Bitcoin, likes to accumulate some more long term, starting around 86,000, 87,000, that would be a level to watch, no doubt about it. Okay, so that gives us a little bit of a synopsis there on the midterm and the near term. Again, near term, we're still watching to see is this a bull flag or not, and we're watching in the midterm this trend line. And obviously, we know if the bull market resumes or the next leg up if we confirm above 123,000. All right. Now, lastly, what I want to do is I want to flip out and take away these trend lines, and we're going to flip over to the logarithmic chart. Now, the log chart is good when you're looking back a long, long time. In other words, going back to, basically on Coinbase to 2014. I mean, you go back to 2009 because that's when Bitcoin started, but really for all intents and purposes, this is fine. This captures the last three bull market levels. Now, if we're talking about where Bitcoin could go in the next big bull move, very simply, I would just look at these highs, right? And again, I'm not, by the way, this target isn't a near term target for me, right? I mean, it's not like I'm saying by year end we're up to this level, but if you're talking about a bullish type potential move, you can't deny the 2017 high on the log chart connected to the 2021, which it touches it again basically in late 2021. And again, it would make sense that in the next bull, we could head up into that level, which, believe it or not, is all the way up really around 230,000. So, I mean, we're talking, over $100,000 more. But the other side, remember, you can't just listen. I understand most people watching this video are going to be bulls on Bitcoin. And again, as I've always said, I'm a long-term bull on Bitcoin. I see the value in it considering fiat currencies and the debt that so many industrialized, first world countries are taking on. And by the way, second and third world too, but those aren't making up the crux of the economic scenario at this point. But the idea again is that you need something that's digital. Gold, you have metals, etc., but really digital on the digital gold side, that's Bitcoin and is being adopted as such by many, many institutions. So let's talk about the bear case. Well, very clearly to me, there's an upsloping trend line here, right? And again, what's interesting about this is you can't deny that this is very close to that level that we just talked about, which again, as this inches up, this is going to get into that 80,000 range. And that would again give us a pivot point from the lows in 2020 for a potential breakdown into that support level. So I suffice it to say this: if we enter a bear market in stocks, in risk assets, let's say we get a major correction, more than the correction that we saw during Liberation Day and the subsequent downside that followed. Essentially, if you get that in the stock market, let's say the NASDAQ drops 30-40%, my guess is Bitcoin would come back towards that 70 to 80 plus thousand level. And as long as that area holds, then that's your buying opportunity. If that breaks, some trouble really starts where you could see something much, much worse, something like the Great Recession of 08-09 in the stock market. And obviously then Bitcoin could go down a lot more. But right now, assuming we don't get to that craziness of risk asset and recession and financial crisis levels, the 75, 85,000 range is really, to me, an intriguing opportunity for a retrace buying opportunity. And like I always say, guys, when I look at Bitcoin, and really I do this with all assets, right? I never go all in on my first buy. I always assume the worst case scenario, which says, okay, well, let's put 1/5 of a position starting long at 85 or 86,000. Then if it drops another 5,000, another 1/5. If it drops, or every 10,000, you inch in just a little bit. The idea is dollar cost average. Dollar cost average on things like Bitcoin, on things like quality names and stocks, that over the long term should be a good entry price because you're constantly dollar cost averaging versus going all in. You can be underwater massively before that asset turns around. And that's if it does turn around to those levels. Remember, the NASDAQ in 2000 did not make a new all time high for 15 years. So little things like this. Again, nothing that we've experienced in recent history since a lot of investors got involved in crypto or in stocks. But I do warn people that that can happen, and we want to be very, very aware of it. And again, I just speak from experience here. Okay. Lastly, what I want to do here, guys, is flip over to the regular chart again. Let's look at Bitcoin dominance. This is kind of an interesting chart. This has me a little bit more on the bearish side near term. Again, we had the short term, immature bear flag starting to form. But look at this chart, guys. This is a little bit concerning for Bitcoin. Now, again, listen, Bitcoin could go sideways and altcoins maybe are getting ready to rip higher. I actually think that's a plausible scenario for altcoins to start to outperform. And I'm going to tell you why. Altcoins to me, and I'm not talking about Ethereum. Ethereum's done great. Granted, it hasn't made a new all-time high, but very likely I think it can. But the thesis here is you have a parallel, beautiful highs all along here. Notice every time you hit it, you pull back. Every time you hit it, pull back, pull back, pull back, right? And the idea here is look at the low to low, and Bitcoin dominance is starting to slip. So the idea here is it doesn't necessarily mean Bitcoin is going to come lower. What it actually could mean, maybe Bitcoin just goes more sideways, but altcoins start to gain traction. And the thesis here, and I know I'm kind of branching into altcoins at this point, but the thesis here, what would make altcoins start to run and gain traction? And the answer would be is that if the Russell, I look at altcoins as the Russell 2000. The Russell 2000 is basically small caps. So if small caps, which have underperformed the S&P and the NASDAQ, if they start to outperform, money goes into essentially rotates from big cap tech down to small caps. Money could rotate from Bitcoin into altcoins. And so again, Bitcoin dominance, a lot of people look at that and say, oh, that's really bearish for Bitcoin. It actually just may mean that Bitcoin is going to, if this is truly breaking down, and we don't know that yet. This is the weekly chart. Again, it needs to not only close below, but then confirm. But if Bitcoin dominance is breaking down, it could mean altcoins are getting ready to outperform in the near term, where Bitcoin dominance could at least come back into this level, and that could mean another leg up. And I do want to point out that the Russell has vastly underperformed. All money flow, or not all, but majority of money flow has gone into the mega caps. The mega caps, Nvidia, Microsoft, all these have sucked it up, much like Bitcoin. Bitcoin has sucked up that money flow, right? Everyone's gotten into Bitcoin, but they've forgotten some of these other altcoins. Now, again, I'm not going to pretend to say, oh, the crap coins are the place to be, but what others? Avalanche, Chainlink, some of these other ones that are still underperforming massively, again, those may be the recipient of some money flow here. So just some food for thought. And obviously, we have to see, listen, it's important that the stock market holds up. And my thesis here for altcoins maybe getting another leg up, it's important that the stock market doesn't collapse, because if the stock market collapses, money runs from everything, right? It runs from everything from Bitcoin down to altcoins to small cap see exodus, large cap see exodus, etc. But again, the thesis here is if the market can at least hold up and chop in this range, altcoins and micro or small caps should outperform in the near term. All right, guys, long video. I apologize for the long video, but a lot of information in this chart. Watch Bitcoin's price action. Does the bear flag start to play out to the downside, or does it mature and then play out? Watch the key trend lines we've talked about here. Hope you guys found this useful. Thank you so much for being supporters of my YouTube here and Verified Investing. Take care.